Touches my soul. It's always a blessing to have especially spiritual leaders who can speak words that are relevant. Speak words that are relevant. And our Sheikh, he always does that. Please welcome Sheikh Subedar.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawalah. My fellow brothers and sisters, elders and children, for those of you who were born alive and knew what was going on, in 2001, September 11, I'm confident you remember till this day where you were and what you were doing when you heard the horrific news of what happened in New York City and in Washington, D.C. Yes or no? Yes. I didn't hear you all. Yes or no? Yes. I'll tell you where I was. I left Pakistan that morning. I was crossing the Wagah border on my way to India on a bus that was India-Pakistan tourism. And we were stopped by the military. And the military vehicle surrounded this bus and escorted us to an empty city of New Delhi, where the bus station was empty and each and every one of us was pulled out and interrogated, not knowing what is going on. By the time I got to my destination in Delhi, I found out what had transpired. My life, just as your life, changed that day. However, from that moment onwards, for the last 22 years, as a body and as a unit, many of us cannot remember what we've done and what impact that has had for us or against us. And that's the reason we're here tonight. And I want to give you two stories as to why our presence here tonight is essential and important. I moved from Canada to America in 2002, 1 year after 9/11. And I became an Imam in a small city in Florida. 7 months later, I got an email from the White House, from President Bush, that he's inviting me to Washington, D.C. to be a part of the faith-based, community-based initiatives. Now, I thought it was a scam. I was outside playing with the kids. I called some of my students. I said, look at this email. It looks like a scam. And said, no, Imam, it looks authentic. Register and let's see what happens. Long story short, registered. It was approved, got vetted. I'm now going to Washington, D.C. But in my heart, there is a wariness. And that is, how should I go to Washington, D.C. when I'm invited by a president who just entered into a second war with a Muslim country? Afghanistan was first, Iraq is now started. Why should I go and be there with him? Is that a valid question, yes or no? So I sat with my students and I asked them, is it worthwhile me going? And one of my students, Ramsey, may Allah bless him, amazing kid, he said to me, Imam, you are responsible to go and represent Islam and represent our voice. And so I went in a white thobe to Washington, D.C., met over 1,000 people who were coming together to discuss how this country should be united in the face of terror and the face of the turmoil that's happening overseas. And I met with President Bush, not that time, but the year after and the year after. And I went with one topic on my agenda, and that was this. If I'm not going to represent my religion, who's going to represent our religion? And if I'm not going to represent my narrative and write my narrative of my Islam, who's going to write it for us? How many of you here are happy that Fox News has been writing our narrative? Hands up. How many of you are happy and content that Act for America and all those Islamophobic organizations that, according to the Daily Sabah, are pumping $1.5 billion in America into politics, into the media, poisoning their minds against us with Islamophobia? How many of you here tonight are happy with them representing us? Anyone? No? Well, then that means it's imperative to understand here tonight, first and foremost, we are Muslims and we represent Islam. And wherever we get the opportunity, we must take the word of Allah. Say inshallah. Through our words and through our demeanor, through our example, inshallah. I'll give you the second story. A few years later, in my term in Florida, I was invited by the House of Representatives to give the opening prayer. The year before, I was the first Muslim to give the opening prayer in the Senate. So when I went and delivered the opening prayer, I was thinking about where to go eat, how to drive back 8 hours from Tallahassee. So I'm right now just strategizing, and a bunch of these Republicans and these representatives came and grabbed me and said, "We'd like to talk to you for a few minutes." I'm like, sure. I walk into this room with them, session is ongoing, and they sat with me for almost 2 hours. And our discussion revolved around two things. Who are you, and where are your people? It is sad that we today jump to a conclusion that every single senator and representative, either of our state or of our country, knows Islam and knows Muslims, when the fact could be the contrary. And so they ask a simple question, where are your people? Brothers and sisters, tonight, we're here to say, here we are, say inshallah, that we must understand that in this political climate, where it's no longer, as our dear Bashir Jones said, that we're either on, if we're not on the table, we're on the menu. It seems right now that we're being extracted from the menu. For both presidential candidates seem to not care about our existence right now. And that's why it's essential, taking the name of Allah, representing Allah and His Deen, seeking the aid and assistance from the Divine. We must get out there, we must make our voices heard. And it could be done in many ways, but the best way to do it is to vote, and vote with your pens, and vote with your voice, and allow the world to hear that you are in America, that you exist in this country, that you're not going anywhere from here. This is my home, this is your home, this is our home. How dare anyone think of taking us out of this country? May we understand the power of unity, say Ameen. May we understand the power of coming together and working together, Ameen. May Allah use us for the benefit of humanity and for goodness to prevail on this earth. Ameen.